What's up, guys? It's the HPR Chronicles Podcast with Shakur and Smith. It's a podcast about history, politics, and race from a pop culture's perspective, and we cover current affairs. If you tuned in last week, we covered the impeachment, Parnas, Biden, Burisma, Pelosi being gangster, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And Soleimani and, you know, our opinion on why that stuff happened.
And the candidates.
Like that. And the candidates, yeah. This week, actually. So anyway, for those of you who are just joining us for the first time, we're basically a podcast that just tries to break stuff down simple for you guys from a pop culture's perspective. You know, I'm a film director from Trinidad and Tobago. I love history, politics. I travel a lot. Chris is a veteran of the Army Reserves, who currently works for the VA, and he has a passion for history and politics and also travels and stuff. It's about truth, but not pro any race, just pro truth. Truth offends you. We're sorry, not sorry. And that's our slogan. And today, you know, I've said before, if you're familiar with our show, that one of the things I love about doing this podcast, as opposed to my other one that's about relationships, is that I get to learn things in the process myself as I'm sharing things with you guys, you know? Mm-hmm. So I'm kind of excited about this show because, you know, all my life since I've been here from Trinidad and Tobago, I've heard of the caucuses and the Iowa Caucus, and I never knew what that stuff meant. So to present this stuff to you guys today, we had to look this stuff up. So it's great to kind of learn this stuff, and the caucuses are coming up in about 2 weeks. So now I know what this is and what the process is, you know what I mean? So I'm just so in this show, this episode today, I'm just gonna briefly just let you guys know what the Iowa Caucus is all about. And my source was Wikipedia, so you guys can go in and check it out yourself and get more in depth. But I'm just kind of I'm just gonna go over what the caucus is, the background, and the process for you guys. You know. And maybe we could talk a little bit about it after if we have stuff to say. And if not, you know, that's what the purpose of today's show is, just to explain to you guys who don't know what the caucus is, what it is. So the Iowa Caucus takes place February 3rd, 2020 this year. And let's talk about what is a caucus. And basically what it is in some U.S. states, it's a meeting at which local members of a political party register their preference among candidates running for office or select delegates to attend a convention. Another definition of a caucus is a meeting of supporters or members of a specific political party or movement. The term originated in the United States, but has spread to Australia, Canada, New Zealand, South Africa, and Nepal. As the use of the term has expanded, the exact definition has come to vary between political cultures. So basically, a caucus, in its simplest term for kids that may be listening in middle school or high school, is just a meeting of people and supporters. That's basically what it is. You know, I know you a lot of times you hear these terms, and you know they you know you may have a misunderstanding because it just sounds foreign. Caucus, what are they talking about? But that's basically what it is, a meeting of supporters of a specific political party. That's all it is. You know what I'm saying?
Gotcha.
So let's talk about the Iowa caucuses that's coming up. You know, as everyone knows, we're trying to get Trump out of office here in the U.S. For all of our listeners overseas, that's what we're trying to do. And I'm sure you guys will be happy about that as well. So let's go into what the Iowa caucus is. And again, the source is Wikipedia. So the Iowa caucuses are a biannual electoral event for members of the Democratic and Republican parties in the U.S. state of Iowa. Unlike primary elections in most other U.S. states where registered voters go to polling places to cast ballots, Iowans instead gather at local caucus meetings to discuss and vote on the candidates. During both the presidential and midterm election seasons, registered Iowan voters vote in a per-precinct caucus for the party of which they are registered as a member.
And if I can just real quick, just to say that when he said they go to these caucus places, the places that are school gyms, churches, public libraries, and sometimes even restaurants or fire stations.
Exactly. The caucuses are also held to select delegates to county conventions and party committees, among other party activities. The Iowa caucuses are noteworthy as the first major contest of the United States presidential primary season. Though the graphics of Iowa are not representative of the rest of the country, the caucuses are still seen as a strong indicator for how a presidential candidate will do in later contests. It could be seen as a circular argument, however, as the Iowa caucus, being the first, likely strongly influences later races, and they can provide candidates with momentum going into the following contests. Further, candidates who do poorly in their caucus are likely to drop out in the following days, which we're going to wait and see and talk about.
Yeah, so
the 2020 presidential caucuses are tentatively scheduled for February 3rd, 2020. Go ahead.
Just want to say, like he said, the reason why the importance of the Iowa caucuses is because it's the first state that gets to actually vote for a candidate.
Yeah.
For candidates. So because they're going to be spending the candidates going to be spending a lot of time there, like months or a month or something, or months
trying to rally up
their votes and get people who do support, like they're looking for at least 15% of voters to come to those caucuses so that they can show and then show they'll see the support and then everything else like that.
Yeah, but you know what's interesting? I didn't know they did it like this in these like little caucuses.
Yeah,
that's interesting. This is like some special thing outside. You know what I'm saying?
How you normally would do things.
And you know what? I'm going to discuss the background next, actually, the history of it. But it's interesting how and why they started this caucus thing in Iowa. And why Iowa? Why couldn't it be the Florida caucuses? Or Alabama caucuses?
There are there are 9 other states and 3 U.S. territories that do something similar to holding caucus.
Right, but I'm saying this is the first one that's...
Because they're the first ones to vote.
Why couldn't it be another state had to be first? Why Iowa? You know what I'm saying? That's what I mean. Like, why that state?
I think that state just chose to be the first and do theirs ahead of time.
Yeah.
So because they chose that, because they became that state to do it, then it just kind of fell with that.
Interesting. So let's go into to the background, guys. Exactly what I'm asking Smith right now. So the background: political parties in Iowa have used caucuses to select leaders and candidates for office since the 1800s. Before 1907, parties selected all candidates for political office through the caucus system. Iowa held a presidential primary in 1916, but returned to the caucus system in 1917 due to the high cost and low participation. After the 1968 Democratic National Convention protest activity, the Democratic Party decided to make changes to their presidential nominating process by spreading out the schedule in each state. Since Iowa had a complex process of precinct caucuses, county conventions, district conventions, and a state convention, they chose to start early. Oh, so that's why they chose to start early. In 1972, Iowa was the first state to hold their Democratic caucus and had the first Republican caucuses 4 years later. Under Iowa law, political parties are required to hold caucuses every 2 years to select delegates to county conventions and party committees. Go ahead.
So I just want to add to what you kind of asked, like, why is it so important? Mm-hmm. Do you have that coming up?
Oh, you mean why Iowa?
Yeah.
That's what I said, why they did it first. Well, it just said, I was just asking why Iowa? Why couldn't it be Florida first? You know what I mean?
So I was wrong in some aspect because I didn't know everything about it. But so the one important thing about Iowa being the Iowa caucus and what the importance is because after it's all done, candidates get to find out what platforms are successful. Mm-hmm. And then if a candidate is still having good support, but yet something that they're one of their platforms may not be perfect, then they can make changes before they actually hit the scene. But the other importance is New Hampshire has a state law that says it must be the first state to hold a primary in a presidential election. So a primary. But because Iowa holds a caucus rather than a primary, it has remained the first state to hold any kind of vote on candidates for both parties since 1976.
Right. See?
So I just wanted...
Interesting. No, thanks for adding that. Yeah, see? It's interesting. See, now when I'm hearing all this about the caucuses, the next week, along with the impeachment news, now I have a better understanding of what they're talking about.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So lastly, I'm going to talk about the process. So the Iowa caucuses operates very differently from the more common primary election used by most other states. The caucuses are generally defined as a gathering of neighbors. Rather than going to polls and casting ballots, Iowans gather at a set location in each of Iowa's 1,681 precincts. Typically, these meetings occur, like you said earlier, in schools, churches, public libraries, and even individual houses. Wow.
Yeah.
Caucuses are held every 2 years during both the presidential and midterm election season. But the ones that receive national attention are the presidential preference caucuses held every 4 years, which, is understandable. The rules of the caucus process to determine delegates to national conventions are determined entirely by the party and differ substantially between the Democratic and Republican parties. In addition to the voting and the presidential preference choices, caucus goers begin the process of writing their party's platforms by introducing resolutions. And that's where I stopped. I mean, they also had how the Democrats do it, how the Republicans do it in Iowa.
And it's totally different.
And it's different. If you guys want to go into that, you can. I kind of just want to talk about what it is and
so for the
process and the background of it.
If I can say real quick, it seems like the Democrats do more of these town hall or these caucuses, and so people go and they vote, but they also have the caucus, and then with the Republicans, it's pretty much just a voting thing.
Okay,
doesn't seem like they do too many of the group, but I'm sure they do some. As many.
Yeah,
and the importance. Another significant thing is when some strong candidates can show that they're still up top, and then you can have someone who was not really being seen that much who might bump up, and that might give them a chance to climb to get themselves up to the top tier, or because like they said in 1972 it was who was a candidate?
In 1972?
Yeah, or 1976. The race for the Democrats. Senator George McGovern. Nope, that was 1972. Shoot. Anyway, my point, is that in 1976, Jimmy Carter was not the number one person. Okay. But after the caucus, he his grassroots and he shot up.
That's what they were saying. That after the caucus is when we'll really see who are
the people actually going
the rest
after.
Drop off.
Yeah, and this is why it's important because even though it doesn't, like you said, doesn't represent the entire nation as the demographics of the nation, it just shows that who is putting their support behind people. And like I said, it is good for people to go out and actually go to these caucuses because then you are really helping shape who will be the next president, potential presidential candidate. Right.
Yeah. It's crazy, man. And I know this doesn't have to do much with the caucus, but it's still politics. I just want to say this before we close out on the caucus thing. I honestly think this is the first time that we've had a president that the Republican Party has just completely given up their constitution to satisfy this president.
Yeah,
he's almost like a cult. They were saying.
Yes,
it's weird, like how these Republicans just. Whatever he says, whatever he wants to do, it's like I just don't understand it.
Actually, it's kind of interesting if you think
him over the Constitution. It's crazy.
Yeah, if you take it as the fact that think of what Republicans were saying about him before he was elected.
Oh yeah,
you got Lindsey Graham said some negative stuff. And then turned around, and but it's great. And if a Republican is still in office and is seeking to stay in office, they tend to not say much negative about him because him and his supporters will attack you and do everything they can to ruin the person's chance for re-election, and they'll bring in someone else. And so that's, I hear, one huge reason why the people in the House and in the Senate don't say too much stuff negative about Trump because of the fact they were scared of how the retaliation from him, and you know, and it's kind of scary that this man is not just bullying just people he doesn't agree with. Well, no, he bullies everyone he doesn't agree with. Is that actually the term? And so, and it doesn't matter if you're with his party or not. If you were a great friend to him one time and you make some negative comments, he comes back at you, starts to Twitter war with you, and then you've got death threats. And I mean, people are getting death threats. And that's the scary part.
And one of the things I want to talk about too before we go, guys, I know this more goes in with one of the the last show, but I just want to say this real quick: how it was messed up, how they got rid of the ambassador to Ukraine, the one lady, just because she didn't want to go off, do all the corrupt stuff that they wanted to do. Yeah. That was sad, man. When I was watching the impeachment things, I felt bad for her.
Oh yeah. Like, and to think when they, the way they took her out of Ukraine so quickly. Oh yeah. And if you,
she was in the way.
And last week we talked about Lev Parnas, and there were, if people haven't looked into it, it's kind of scary, because if you think about an ambassador being watched, being tracked, and everything, and how they talked. If you read, it almost looks like someone's about to take her out. Yeah, like there was like a hit on her. Yeah. It was like, I could see that becoming a movie at one point. But definitely. And then for them to have to snatch her out, and obviously somebody is listening and realizes this is going on, but yet, it's all good.
It's all good.
So luckily nothing happened to her and her family. Yeah. But and on top of that,
she said she was afraid for her life too. She wasn't even sure what would happen.
I've heard that.
Man, anyway, guys, the caucuses are coming up. If you didn't know what they were, now you know. Again, we always try to inspire and try to be a catalyst for you guys doing your own research and stuff like that. Yeah. Again, now you know what the Iowa Caucus is all about. They're coming up pretty soon. And let's see who the last man standing is going to be.
Or woman.
Or woman, exactly. Or woman. Person. I'd love for it to be a woman. Is going to be. Don't forget to follow us on social media. Don't forget to subscribe, please, on ISENT Group Digital on YouTube. And people that just like to listen and don't like to look at these two handsome gents, you can get us wherever you get your podcasts, including we were just added to iHeartRadio. Yes. So, thanks for checking in with the HPR Chronicles Podcast with Shakur and Smith.
Oh, real quick, there was a change to the Democratic caucus this year for 2020. Now they're allowing virtual caucuses, so people can use their
that's cool.
Like their computers and cell phones to communicate or to do these caucuses. So that'll
cool.
be very.
So they kind of attend without being there.
Yep. So that will be very interesting seeing how that plays
out. Yeah.
So
cool. Yeah. So nice. So it's the HPR Chronicles with Shakur and Smith HPR Chronicles Podcast with Shakur and Smith, and we'll see you guys after the caucuses. And we will talk about that, on the 5th. We'll see you guys after the caucuses. And then on the 5th,
I think we'll start back with the day in the history, the thing you used to do.
That's right. I forgot about this day in history, guys. Last week and this week. I'll definitely start that back as well next week. Thanks for saying that.
Yeah. The following.
We'll start it the following week. After the caucuses for February. It's Black History Month too.
There you go.
So we'll start back this day in history for Black History Month. Thank you guys for checking in once again, and we'll see you guys next week. Peace.
Peace.